Welcome to the Current GIS Trends in Environmental and Natural Resources Agencies webinar, the first in the new Environmental and Natural Resources webinar series. I'm Megan Martinez, an industry marketing specialist here at Esri in Redlands, and I will be your moderator today. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted in the next few days. You will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording within a week or so. Before we get started, I would like to encourage you to post your questions in the GoToWebinar questions dialog box during the presentation, and we will answer as many questions as time permits after the webinar. I'd now like to introduce our two presenters. We have Mike Bialish, a National Account Manager on the state government team, and he's based out of the Philadelphia office. And then joining Mike is Matt Tarleton, a National Solutions Engineer on the state government team, and he's based out of Minneapolis. So now I'll hand it over to Mike.
Okay, thank you, Megan. And thank you everyone for participating today. We really appreciate this opportunity to talk with you about current trends within environment and natural resources agencies. A little bit more background about Matt and I. We're actually a team that works with environment and natural resources agencies in all 50 states. And this gives us a great opportunity to look at things holistically across the country, which is much of what we're going to share with you today. This webinar is actually the first in a series of webinars. And today we're going to start by looking at broader trends that we're seeing across all the environment and natural resource agencies, whereas in subsequent webinars, which will happen basically monthly, we'll focus on more specifics relative to particular agency types. However, each webinar will be focused largely on the context and trends that we discussed today. As far as today, here are the topics that we're going to cover. We'll start out by level setting on the ArcGIS platform and common patterns of use to kind of get everyone on the same page. Then we will discuss the key trends that we're seeing in environmental agencies. And then Matt will actually illustrate examples of these trends. We'll try to leave about 10 minutes or so for questions at the end. And as a reminder, please submit your questions as we go. Okay, so as I mentioned, we're going to start with the ArcGIS platform. This is maybe a review for many of you, but we always find it good to set some context to start out. So the main idea behind the ArcGIS platform is bringing GIS and location-based intelligence, of course, to entire organizations in the form of data management capabilities and mapping and analysis and collaboration capabilities, among others. In its modern form, the platform is doing this through a web GIS approach, which at its core is a services, meaning web services-based approach, to expose GIS assets in terms of data, tools, maps, and apps across organizations in a secured but user-friendly way. In the center of it is a portal, which is the content management system for GIS resources. Most of you have probably used ArcGIS Online, and so you've actually used an ArcGIS portal, which is where all of your users and groups are managed along with various permissions and securities, allowing you to appropriately access GIS content. The portal exposes these resources to your users on any device in any situation. So whether you're in the office on the desktop, you're in a web browser, or in the field leveraging smart devices and apps. As the platform has evolved, the portal is not only available in a software as a service model in the cloud like ArcGIS Online, but it's also available in your own on-premise or cloud infrastructure through ArcGIS Enterprise. We'll mention Enterprise a little bit more later, but that's basically bringing ArcGIS Online-like capabilities to your infrastructure. So overall, there's a lot of flexibility for deployment. That's kind of the point there. And given the factors that are in play in terms of the business that environmental agencies serve, and with things like working with sensitive data, integrating GIS with other business systems, and the need to collaborate across multiple program areas, this model offers a great deal of benefit to support that. Also, the system allows for you to consume and make available data that you manage yourself, as well as online content via the ArcGIS platform, as well as from other agencies that's available. Additionally, it's possible, it's possible to keep enterprise instances and ArcGIS Online in sync within and between agencies through what's known as distributed collaboration, which really leads to a system of systems or distributed GIS approach. Again, tying this back to needs in environmental agencies, this effectively allows for cross-agency collaboration, which is a major need as agencies work with various federal, state, and local government partners, along with nonprofits, regional organizations, and so on. You might be asking yourself, well, how is this different? I already use ArcGIS Server and consume services. What's different? Well, as opposed to a more traditional siloed approach to the development of GIS capabilities and things like custom application development focused on a particular need, WebGIS offers a more pervasive use of GIS resources across organizations and in any situation, like I mentioned before. So the business needs, of course, are still driving development, but the exposure and deployment of the resulting resources is much more pervasive, allowing the ability for more needs to be met simultaneously and providing appropriate access to resources to more people within the organizations. So the result of all this is that the WebGIS platform sits in the center of your organization in terms of the distribution and access to authoritative systems of record for location-based information, also for self-service mapping and engagement capabilities with the system, and analytical capabilities, and then being able to engage the entire organization as appropriate with these resources. This is a huge benefit related to collaboration needs for environmental agencies, as I mentioned before, and really allows for maximum benefit in terms of leveraging the platform. So I hope that quick overview helps, and I'm now going to transition into the common ways in which we see the platform being utilized, which actually provides a really nice framework for implementation and maximum benefit of leveraging ArcGIS. So what you're seeing here on the screen are the 9 common patterns of use that provide that framework that I just mentioned. So these are effectively business patterns of implementation and range from data management and visualization to field mobility and monitoring, to analytics, to design and decision support, to engaging constituents, and of course, sharing and collaboration. So as you look at these are not only the core benefits that the platform offers, but they provide a framework to assess business challenges and priorities, which inherently then helps to define the appropriate solutions or sets of solutions to address them. This has become an effective tool, really, in helping agencies establish, things like short and long-term vision and assessments of business value, and then delivering on that. So I'm not to the trends portion of the presentation yet, but actually this framework is actually a trend that we've been seeing, especially as the platform has evolved into the WebGIS paradigm that I described earlier. We see currently many organizations kind of taking a step back and looking at their implementations with this framework or context and planning for future growth and increased return on investment from the platform. We've worked with many agencies generally, with this context in mind, but also specific to particular workflows ranging from things like invasive species monitoring to asset management. So this is something we'll hit on more in upcoming webinars, but I wanted to at least set this context relative to the trends and solutions development and deployment that we've been seeing. Okay, so with all that said, I'd like to actually move into those key trends that we've been seeing, particular to natural resources agencies. So as I start here, there we go. As I start here, you will see I numbered these 1 through 7. There's 7 trends that I'm going to cover. But really, that's only for presentation purposes. They're really not in any particular order. Okay, so the first trend I'm going to describe is becoming very common across environmental agencies, and that's the increasing connection and then distribution of location-based data, resources, and intelligence across organizations. Largely due to the WebGIS pattern I described earlier, as well as the evolution of the platform, especially in terms of things like apps, which I'll discuss actually in subsequent trends. It's become much easier to engage more parts of organizations and more staff at all skill levels too. There's still, of course, the absolute need for GIS professionals to administer and manage the system, but the availability of GIS capabilities across organizations has really increased. So what's happening is the portal concept that I discussed earlier is really starting to take shape related to organizational location-based tools and intelligence in environmental agencies. Of course, we see this particularly in the forms of portal landing pages and galleries available to you, of course, whether you're in the office, in a browser, or out in the field. Regardless of that, you have quick, simple, and appropriate and secured access to the resources you need at the time that you need them. Okay, so this trend is truly helping to foster collaboration. That's where we see kind of the biggest benefit inside organizations, and getting to the concept of shared understanding as opposed to traditional, segmented kind of approaches. So basically, the idea is to make resources available across organizations, across the entire organization, as opposed to just for particular programs. We see this really taking shape in environmental agencies, especially supporting things like permitting processes. So it's often the case that permitting takes place in several program areas within environmental agencies. However, many of the core resources that are needed to support that, so things like species and habitat data, geologic data, previously permitted sites, support all of the various permitting systems. So by deploying with this model that I'm describing, agencies can bring together authoritative information in support of all these processes, which of course increases efficiencies and reliability. There we go. The next trend that I want to discuss is streamlining of field operations. As I'm sure many of us know, this is certainly not a new trend, but an ever-evolving one of not only streamlining field-based data collection, but also as a means to connect field workforces with the rest of the organization. And for those workforces to have available to them authoritative systems of record while they're in the field and be able to contribute to them directly from the field. So as you can see on the screen, a suite of apps. So these are some of the apps that I was mentioning earlier. A suite of apps are part of the ArcGIS platform geared towards field operations. So whether you're planning the work, prioritizing and assigning it, actually navigating to the sites where you need to do the work, or doing the actual data capture. All the while this is going on, the information, so whether it be things like permits, facility inspections, species surveys, or managed assets, is synchronized with the platform and monitored through apps like Operations Dashboard. For environmental agencies, it's obviously also extremely valuable that this data collection can happen whether you're connected or disconnected from the network. And the apps that you see on the screen can be used individually or integrated together seamlessly to meet various workflow requirements. So some examples of this, there we go. Some examples of this include things like forest health inventories and monitoring for various insects and diseases, and even complex workflows such as supporting forest inventory and management, and supporting the permitting processes that I was mentioning before, that all the environmental agencies are faced with, and with activities like inspections, surveys, and monitoring, and so on. Also, the overall utilization of these apps here has really shifted as part of this trend. So it's shifted from the notion of setting up just, say, a collector data collection app to more of an implementation of the platform that leverages collector or other field apps for the data collection portion. So that's kind of a big shift in perspective as well. Matt will highlight some additional examples and capabilities in upcoming demonstrations in a couple of minutes. All right, continuing on. This next trend, very much relates to what I was just describing and has to do with the increased monitoring and tracking of real-time data and performance. So this gets, of course, to the larger industry trend known as IoT, or Internet of Things, which effectively has to do with the ever-growing sensor network that is becoming more and more available, including to the ArcGIS platform. Platform capabilities allow for things like the real-time consumption of sensor data. So when I say that, I mean things like weather data and information, stream gauge data and information, air quality monitoring sensors, or even radio collar data and radio telemetry data. By being able to leverage these data sources and this real-time data, it provides a great deal of benefit to environmental agencies to either add to or increase the value of operational data and resources that they're working with, and allowing the making of informed decisions in near real time. The examples I'm showing here on the screen are different iterations of air quality sensor data leveraged through the platform and used in a variety of ways. Okay. Real-time tracking, thinking about a little bit more, also has to do with the tracking of the field workforce themselves and the data collection and observations, of course, that they're making. This is also a huge trend in terms of persisting this type of information into things like dashboards. And what that effectively does is bring those observations to light for the organization in real time. Additionally, it also helps to track performance of the various programs and data collection efforts relative to particular goals and key performance indicators or KPIs. So, for example, many agricultural departments have goals of so many invasive species surveys per year, and forestry departments have acreage goals relative to forest inventory, and so on. Additionally, this trend is also about, overall performance of programs themselves and the impact that they're having. And so you see on the bottom right-hand corner there, we have a solution, the performance management solution. And that's what this is all about in terms of various indicators that are important, really to the core of environmental agencies. So the idea here is this helps track performance, relative to the very goals that support core environmental agency missions. All right, continuing on. The next trend has to do with how applications are developed and deployed. So the trend, especially for environmental organizations, has been really away from costly and often time-consuming custom application development to a configure-first approach. So many of the tools of the platform, especially configurable apps like Web App Builder and Story Maps, allow for this approach to be applied to somewhat complex but core business processes of environmental agencies. So things like environmental screening, which obviously is really important to environmental organizations, or things like situational awareness. So, at times where there's suspected or detected environmental impact, so that could be, the sighting or detection of a new invasive species, a chemical spill that happens, a water quality complaint that's submitted. So in times like that, these situational awareness configure first apps really come into play. This has also really come into play for agencies, especially environmental agencies in recent times with all the natural events that have been happening. So things like Hurricane Florence, where preparedness, response, and follow-up activities have very much been supported by configure first applications that can be, spun up almost instantaneously to support core aspects related to these events. All right, continuing on to the next trend. This trend actually has been one of the fastest growing ones that we've seen in the environmental space, particularly over the last few years. And this is in the form of internal and external collaboration, data sharing, and overall constituent engagement. So there's a family of apps known as the apps for community that comes with the ArcGIS platform that allows for the communication, of course, of what programs are doing and the impact that they're having, such as their story maps, Web App Builder applications, and even the development of smartphone apps with App Studio. Related is also the open sharing of course, GIS related assets through things like open data, as well as the gathering of feedback from partners in the community at large with citizen science and crowdsourcing applications. There we go. This isn't a new trend at all, but it's really a very, very much growing and evolving trend. And we're seeing, for example, story maps being used to convey complex resources and information, such as for annual reports and the documentation of complex programs that exist within environmental agencies and the impact that they're having, such as like water sampling programs. We see configurable Web App Builder apps being stood up to convey all sorts of program information like prescribed burning programs, as well as being templates for crowdsourcing and citizen science. Speaking of citizen science, this is actually a major trend in and of itself for everything from reporting of water quality issues to habitat and species of special concern surveys. And there are a wide variety of options, of course, depending upon requirements, from spinning up a Survey 123 survey to using a simple geoform to using a configured web application builder template. And as mentioned earlier, there's an ever increasing trend towards the deployment of smartphone apps that are based on GIS data, services, and resources for everything from promotion of recreational assets to the collection of public feedback for proposed projects. Okay, the other thing I wanted to mention here is ArcGIS Hub. So you may have been at a Esri or related conference or event and heard this notion of a hub. And this is very much based around this concept of constituent engagement that I was talking about. So the idea with this is that it sits on top of your portal, as I described earlier, and is organized by initiatives. The hub allows for the assimilation of all the various tools we've been discussing to inform constituents, track progress, and collect feedback relative to these initiatives. So initiatives, these could be related to things like reducing invasive species, enhancing recreational assets, or improving water quality, and so on. So the hub is a mechanism. The idea is that it's a mechanism for everyone to be involved. And the idea is that partnering like this will help strengthen the initiatives, leveraging technology. So what we're seeing here, this is more of an up and coming trend, which we've seen implemented for sure at the local level, but is now starting to appear in the state and federal levels as well. So more to come on this in future webinars, but I at least wanted to cover it here relative to this trend. Okay, the last technical oriented trend I'm going to cover that's very important to environmental agencies is the integration of GIS and location-based services with central and core business systems. Being able to bring GIS capabilities to those systems, or conversely leverage the data and capability of those systems with GIS-centric tools, is a major trend we're seeing for things like permitting, budgeting, maintenance, complaints tracking, and so on. The platform enables much of this integration with a series of apps known as the apps for Office, which you're seeing on the screen, that allow for this type of integration, whether it be dropping of GIS capabilities in a software like Excel or PowerPoint or SharePoint or Power BI, or taking information from those systems and integrating it with design and planning tools like a GeoPlanner, or visualizing them within an operations dashboard. One of the other trends here is enabling non-GIS power users to visualize and analyze their data from the various systems with GIS tools and capabilities. This is exactly what Insights for ArcGIS was designed for, and something that Matt will be highlighting in the next portion of the webinar, and that we'll definitely dive deeper into in future webinars. All right, lastly, I wanted to mention one non-technical trend that is becoming more and more important, and that is documenting and illustrating ROI, or return on investment. It's really becoming commonplace at this point for especially environmental agencies who are often strapped for resources and budget to document and illustrate the ROI achieved by the investment in and implementation of technology. There's some very good resources available, many of which have been customer developed that can help with this and help you standardize and templatize the ROI process. You can see an example of that on the right-hand side from the Delaware Department of Agriculture, who very clearly documented monetary savings as well as workflow efficiency improvements by implementing field mobility tools in their agricultural easement monitoring processes. So we have various links to resources like those on the screen to help you with this, and we'll discuss this more in future webinars as well. Okay, so that's the trends I wanted to cover today, some of those major trends that we're seeing. And so now that I've discussed them, I'm going to talk just a minute about ArcGIS solutions, which are actually readily available to you today, and really illustrate many of the trends and patterns that I just discussed in terms of the way that they're implemented. Okay, so solutions, what ArcGIS solutions are, they're configurations of the ArcGIS platform components around core business processes and workflows. They basically utilize the COTS and configurable apps that are part of the platform, and so they're very simple to deploy and are supported actually just like our software is. So how we develop these is through working with organizations to define core business processes and workflows and implement the platform to meet those various needs. When we do this, we leverage the common patterns of use that I mentioned earlier to take a holistic look at those requirements. Also, when we do this, we orient the solution efforts on workflows that are repeatable. So meaning, with the example of environment and natural resources, that they have utility in whatever state that you might be working in across the country. A good example of this is that we recently partnered with the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services to develop the invasive pest monitoring and reporting solutions, which is a workflow that every state agriculture department is challenged with. What else is really beneficial is that because the invasive solutions are configurable and extensible, they can be utilized across environmental agencies who are challenged with invasive species monitoring, such as forestry departments, DNRs, DEPs, fish and wildlife organizations, and so on. So as I mentioned, these are very easily deployable. In fact, you can deploy them directly to ArcGIS Online or Enterprise right from within ArcGIS Pro and configure them at the same time to meet your specific needs. So as you can see on the screen, we have several solution configurations available for environment, natural resources needs, which align well with many of the trends and patterns that I just discussed. And Matt will show a few of these here in a second. Additionally, we'll cover some of these in more detail in future webinars, and there's a wealth of information from their website, which you can see at the bottom, which is solutions.arcgis.com. All right, so with that, I am going to turn it over to Matt to demonstrate examples of the trends, including some of the solutions I just mentioned, which, as I said, are readily available to you now. So Matt, take it away.
Thanks, Mike. So Mike spent a good bit of time talking about ways that our users have been implementing ArcGIS across the organization. Now what I wanted to do is kind of take a step back and take a little bit of a look at the technology actually fueling these trends and demonstrate a little bit of how you could use them in your own organization. The pattern that Mike picked as first, and we worked together on this, was this benchmark foundational approach of connecting and distributing location intelligence to your entire organization. Without that infrastructure in place, everything else I'm going to show today is going to be very difficult, if not impossible, to do. So for that to occur, you need to deploy a portal. And a portal can be ArcGIS Online, which lives in the Esri cloud, or it can be Portal for ArcGIS, which is part of the base enterprise deployment that will live in your own physical infrastructure. But once you have a portal, it enables all these other solutions and configurations and applications that I'll show to be deployed to your entire organization. So Mike talked quite a bit about the portal, and I wanted to show a little bit about what a portal actually is. So regardless of if you're using ArcGIS Online or Portal for ArcGIS, this is how a portal will look when a user signs in. The user will come to a website, they'll sign in, and then across the top, they'll have the capability to do their own self-serving mapping in 2 or 3D. They'll have the capability to look at the gallery, which is the admin's place of putting key content. They can look at groups, join or leave groups, which are common groups of users that have common workflows. And of course, you can go in, you can manage and add content that you can then share to others. Now, in this organization, I'm an administrator, so I also have this organization option, so I could go in and I can configure everything here. This organization right here is living in ArcGIS Online. The marketing team helped me out and developed this nice branding of the environment and natural resources. And then down below, I embedded 4 commonly used web applications. And so if you're a GIS admin and you have an app that you built and you keep getting asked every day by people, well, how do I get this or how do I do that? You can embed that app right here. Then when they log in, they're going to see that right away. Likewise, if you have an application that you know is absolutely mission critical that certain user groups will have to go to and use very frequently, you can embed it in. And again, the end result is that when you sign into Portal, you see the type of information that is relevant to you and your job. It's a great way to organize content, to share content, and make sure that users can easily, with just a couple of clicks, access the information they need and make their job more efficient. So this is an example of an internal-facing portal, but Portal is not just about sharing content internally. This is an example from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources, and this is a portal that is being used to house all their different public-facing applications. And you can see on the left, you have tags, you can go up to the top and share. And all of these are really great applications, but there's one in particular I really like. So this is a searching app for state campgrounds and trails, in particular in the Upper Peninsula or the Northern Peninsula of Michigan. And I like this application because if I was on a smartphone, I could go in, I could use my address either in the GPS in the phone, or I could search something. And in the fields, or if I'm driving somewhere, I can find a place that's nearby. I can go and explore. If I'm actually in a state park, I can find trails and locations of interest around me. And so this is a really great example of how that portal can be deployed publicly. You want to put them out there so that people can get them easily, or you can use it internally as a collaboration tool, or both. Our best practice is definitely to have some public-facing content in ArcGIS Online, but for that data sets, those data sets that are very secure, you want to keep behind your firewall, you can use Portal for ArcGIS to do that, make sure that nothing gets out. So the other thing I want to point out here is that everything you can see here has been set up by the administrator and by the person who published this app. You can control these widgets, who can see what and who can do what. It doesn't matter if that's public facing or internal facing, you can control the data flow and see who does what. So that's a little bit about Portal, and I hope it kind of took some of the mystique away about what that actually is. And I think the next biggest trend that Mike and I get continually asked about is field mobility applications. And so when you put data into a portal, you actually are building a web map, and you can think of it as an MXD from ArcMap or a project from Pro that actually lives in ArcGIS Online or Portal for ArcGIS. And then within that map are web layers. And those web layers persist through all parts of the portal. And so when someone goes in and updates them, whether that's through desktop GIS or out in the field, those changes are immediately reflected in the map and in any applications that are pointing to the map. It's all seamless through services. Everything's updated immediately. So this has been great for field mobility because now anyone who's out in the field with a smart device, and it doesn't matter if it's Android or iOS or Windows, they can download Collector or Survey123, which are our two applications. They can create content in the field, and that is immediately updated as long as they have a field connection. The other very popular question is, well, how do these things work in a non-connected environment? And the answer is they store the information locally, and then when you have a data connection, it will connect everything back up and then serve everything up to the portal. So in this example right here, I have a collector-based application from the state of Maryland. This is a data set that we had built internally. And this is an example of permit workflow. So every one of these points represents an active permit that a field worker is going to have to go out and inspect. Now, if I open up Collector for ArcGIS, I have that same exact data set. And you see here, I can select a different type of permit that I want to add to the data set. So in this particular case, I'm going to do a mining inspection. And as soon as I click that, it will automatically populate based off the attribute table schema, permit ID, everything that I need to collect at that. And this is all, again, built by the person who publishes this. It can be short, it can be long, and of course you can attach attachments, pictures, drawings, that type of thing. They'll all get appended in your data table. So I'm in the Minneapolis office, and I'm going to click this button up here to actually zoom to my physical location, if it will let me. And so I'll manually do it. And so I'm here just south of Minneapolis. I can put the point on the map. I have a mining point there, and I can go to submit it. So it'll save the feature. And now when I come back to this map, if I zoom out, you can see the points are still here in Maryland, but now I have that point stored up in Minneapolis. And again, any information that I append to that will immediately be triggered with this. So the application I used here was Collector. Oftentimes you get asked, what's the difference between Collector and Survey123? Collector is a very good application for collecting attributes specific to geography. So if you're calculating polygons, lines, updating the spatial extent of an object, Collector is really great. It has some capability to do some attributes, which you saw there, but really it's designed for capturing geography content first and information about that point or polygon second. Survey123 is another application, and that one was designed to collect a simple point on a map, but collect a lot of information about that point. It's designed to be a full replacement for paper-based forms and surveys. So this is an example that was created by the Department of Environmental Conservation in New York. And I love this survey because it's branded, it's very flashy, and it's very straightforward. Survey123 forms, I've digitized forms as large as 20, 25 pages, or they can just be a couple questions. They're kind of a blank slate. You build things in Excel and away you go. I really like this example though because it has information for name, email. You can put in the type of information. This is an Angular survey, and then there's an embed of a website where you can see, what zones along the Long Island of New York were you fishing in. What I also really like about Survey123, and this survey illustrates it well, is form-based logic. And so forms have that if and then statement. So if you answer yes to question 7, skip down to number 11, for example. So in this case, if I click yes, I did not catch any fish. You notice that's it. The form is done. I have the forms that I saw above. I can fill those in, and then that's it. But if I click the no button, you notice that now the survey expands, it adds in that new logic, and I then fill in the types of fish that I did catch. And so I can put in common names, how many fish I caught, how big were they, the weight, all that kind of thing, along with comments and trip details. The other thing I really like about this app is, again, the branding. Survey123 is great because you can embed images, you can embed websites on this to I Heart New York with the lovely fish. I thought this was a really good example, and this is public facing too. It's not just internal. The other thing we get a lot of questions about is, can Survey123 and Collector work together? The answer is yes. You can simply embed a URL to Collector, and then it will open up a Survey123 form, so you can collect the information in Collector and then collect more information in Survey123. You can also embed a URL into Survey123 to open up a Collector app, although that's relatively rare. So, like I said, field mobility depends on portal. It's been very popular. The fact that you no longer would have to digitize paper forms or any forms from the field has been a major adjustment on a paradigm shift for many agencies. So it's something I wanted to highlight as the second practice. The other thing that installing a portal in your organization enables is the capability of building web applications. And in this case, this web application is actually a dashboard. Dashboards, there's a program called Operations Dashboard. You can build and edit these in their own program, or you can go online through a browser and do this. Going back to that Collector demonstration from Maryland, this is a dashboard that I built to showcase some of the key performance indicators about that data set. So you can see the actual map here on the left, sites awaiting first inspection, and then down here on the bottom, some key performance indicators. So I'm interested in how many of these have actually completed, how many of them are in the pipeline to be finished. And then on the bottom, more key performance indicators. So if there have been any permits that have been long withstanding and have not been updated. And so this entire dashboard is configurable. I just used the dashboard template, and then I went through and I just changed over here. So this is a list, a pie chart, and then key performance indicators. You can edit this any way you see fit. But again, this is off the shelf. You just configure what you want, and this is all based off the attribute table. So as new information comes in to your web map from the field or from wherever else, all of these key performance indicators and the map itself will update seamlessly. So this dashboard is here specifically as an example of kind of a situational awareness type of viewer. They don't all have to be a very simple, just kind of simple view of what's going on. This is another demonstration from Naperville. This is one that we built internally. But I like this dashboard because it has a lot going on in it. It has the map, but the map is almost secondary to these key performance indicators. And so you can go over here and you have had 198 good quality days in 2017. You can click on this history button and it's calculating the statistics straight from the attribute table of the web app, or the web map rather, and building this good air quality days, and you can see the trend. Over here, likewise, you can have, residents with heart disease. Your target is less than 15%, currently at 14.2. And again, you could click on the history, or if you want to know how this was calculated, the details with the methodology. And so this is great because this can be shared, to an executive type of thing. This could be shared publicly if you want the data to be. You can configure how you share it. Everything goes into one of these templates, and you just configure it the way you want, and then send it out and share it to whoever you see fit. So that's kind of the beauty of using dashboards. But again, dashboards are just an example of using web applications. Another very popular one is what's called the environmental screening application. And Mike talked a little bit about solutions at ArcGIS.com. That website is absolutely loaded with different pre-configured or templatized that can be configured solutions, and you can download them, you can deploy them in your organization, you configure them the way you see fit and away you go. This one has been one that has been very popular, and so this is again Maryland. And then this application, you can go in, you can upload a shapefile if you want, you can give specific coordinates, and what I will do here is actually free draw. So imagine you're thinking of replacing a bridge. So I'm going to draw this basic line here across this bridge. It's not very precise, but that's okay because we're going to buffer it by a couple of miles. We'll say 3. And then I'm going to click the report action. So the way this tool works is that once you click the report button, it goes through and it actually calculates against all the different layers that have been shared with the configuration of this application. So you can see artificial reefs. So in this case, there's one artificial reef that would be impacted by this, fish spawning sites, marine protected areas. You can click information. And so This is an easy way for you to draw a polygon, put in a shapefile, add a coordinate, however you want to use this tool, and it will drill down through all your layers and then develop this nice report. What's really nice about this application is if I go over here to the print widget, I can click print, it'll take just a second, and it will take all of that information out and summarize it into a report that can then be configured and edited through HTML however you see fit. So in this example, it takes everything that's been shared with that solution, it uploads it into the report, and at the top, it will take a couple seconds to load, but it will generate a map just like I had here of the area that I have with the drawn the suspected bridge, and it's not working right now. Our internet's been a little bit slow, but this is a way over and over again. Mike and I have been approached about how to digitize some of these workflows regarding printing of reports and standardizing of reports, and this is a very powerful tool. And it seems that a lot of the users we talk to do not know it's there, do not know how to use it, and it's been something that's been very handy for some users. Now, another form of web applications is the story map. And story maps aren't just about building a nice looking map that will be passed out, they're about telling a story. And a very simple conceptual one using this exact same example is this, you're going to replace this bridge right here. This dashed area is the area that's likely to be impacted, and we want some public comment. So here's the bridge area. Again, this is for demonstration purposes only. This was developed in-house. But you can do a project description, the surrounding communities that would be impacted, the data that was analyzed, and then all that information that you would have had in your report, you can embed in, and away you go. And of course, there's the capability here to provide feedback if you want to send feedback back to the organization who built this. So this is a really, a very strongly geographic story map. You can send it out. It's pretty straightforward. Everything you need is right here. Story maps are also great because they're kind of a blank canvas that you can go ahead and kind of create whatever you want. And so I wanted to showcase this other one. This is from the Open Space Institute. This is actually Esri's Spotlight story map from September of 2018, last month. And it's just a beautiful story map about saving the Southern Cumberlands, which is the Southern Cumberlands Plateau and Fire Gizzard Trail in the United States. What I like about the story map is you have this nice screen here. There's actually a YouTube video embedded behind this to get this nice video. But as you scroll through, again, you have nice maps, you have text that kind of explain everything, you have pictures, and all of this go together to build this strong case about conservation around the Southern Cumberland Plateau. So again, it's not just about maps. As you scroll through the story map, you have a map here, but you also have some of the important species, the important areas that are in here, and then the land used by many. Again, this is the area in orange above average resiliency, and then the green is protected lands. So this entire point of this story map is to build a very powerful case using multimedia in the story map template, and you're simply just embedding web maps, embedding pictures, and making a very powerful story. And so the story map is awesome. I recommend that you check it out. It's actually quite long, so I won't go through all of it. But I wanted to showcase that the story map isn't just about plopping a map on the screen and then putting some comments in. It's really a canvas where you can build a very strong multimedia with pictures and YouTube videos along with maps to tell the story for your agency. And then that can be a story about conservation. It can be an annual report. Again, as creative as you want to take it, you can go through, you can configure the template, and away you go. So that was a little bit about story maps. What I wanted to talk about for number 5, or for this next trend that we've been seeing, ties with story maps, but in and of itself is a different trend, and that is, how do you engage with your constituents beyond just sending out a story map? And so this is a real-world example from the Department of Natural, or the Agency of Natural Resources, rather, in Vermont. And this is their open data portal. And what I really like about this is that this is a website that's publicly available, but when you go to this, you can see immediately different themes that Vermont ANR has available. You can click things. You can also go down, you can look at featured applications, you can look at story maps, stay in the know, and then additional resources as well as contact information. And so connecting with constituents isn't always about sending out a nice story map. It's a two-way street. It's enabling communication, but also enabling data. When people want to do research or want to use authoritative data sets, how do you get that message out and make it easy for people to pull that data and make sure they're using sound authoritative data sets in their analysis? Open data is a great way to do that. I like this one because it's so well organized. Web applications should be embedded within open data is another great way to do that. And so it's really, again, with the contact us in the bottom here, it's a great way to enable communication between constituents and ensure that you're showing your agency off in an effective manner and allowing people to come in and get your data. Another way to engage with constituents that I found to be very impactful is what's called a geoform. And a geoform is another way to collect field mobility, but unlike Survey 123 and Collector, it's not an application, it's a website. So this one actually comes from the city of Huntington Beach in California, and it's the coyote inspection or a coyote incident reporter. So when you come to this website, you have a drop down, and so you can select, a coyote injuring a person. You give information about that, and then you select the location on the map. What I really like about this one is, you can search for an address, you can pick your point, but they also open it up to view submissions, and so you can actually go through and see the other crowdsourced reporting that people have put into this data set. And so injured a person, I can click on that and it shows a generalized area of where that was. And so again, this isn't all just about being able to take reports. It's a two-way street, showcasing data off and really engaging your constituents in a two-way street through GIS. And so that's been a very powerful and a very popular trend. One that agencies have really been trying to capitalize on, and WebGIS has really been helping a lot of agencies along with that. So now I'm going to kind of change a little bit here, and I'm going to go over back to a slide deck and talk about insights for ArcGIS. And this was the sixth trend that Mike talked about, which is how do you expand your GIS footprint into the non-traditional type of users. And so Insights for ArcGIS was designed for everyone in mind, whether that be a data scientist, a business analyst, a traditional GIS professional, or even a senior executive. All of these users have a stake in GIS and also have questions that they want to have solved. The problem is that all three of these different users have a varying degree of skill sets related to GIS, and so how do you make a tool that supports that? So Esri's answer was Insights for ArcGIS, and so it's a way of extending and complementing traditional GIS analysis in a new and intuitive way. And so as you can see here, it's new, it's completely different looking than say ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, and it's all based off of this cards. And what I really like about Insights is that it uses tabular data such as Excel spreadsheets, database pages, things like that. But to actually conduct the analysis, you literally just drag and drop the data sets in. So you can do common GIS analyses and techniques like spatial aggregations, building a new layer or filter. But instead of going through a menu like you do in desktop GIS, you simply just drag and drop and then select the operation that you want to conduct. So Insights for ArcGIS has been utilized by a couple states. I've done several demonstrations. I just have screenshots to protect the privacy of some of these data sets, and so bear with me with that. But what I like about Insights in particular is that it combines that tabular analysis that's always been very traditionally difficult in GIS with spatial analysis. So in this example, I have a creel survey, and then in here are all the different species of fish. This example comes from Ohio. I dragged and I dropped the information in, and then I select crappies, and you can see now on the map, those are the areas where crappies have been found and fished for in Ohio, and you can see it's fairly uniform across the state. So you can go through every one of these and see the different map and get kind of a general view and a general feel of how the different spatial trends for each species of fish evolve. Insights for ArcGIS also connects with our Tapestry database, which is an Esri curated data set. It's a socioeconomic data set. And so what I did here is I took counties, I aggregated all those points into a count by county, and then I added that Tapestry information in. And so you can see a lot of that dark green in there where there's a lot of the big circles. That means there's a lot of users in those areas that were surveyed, and the main Tapestry segment there is called the Salt of the Earth. I didn't make that one up, that's just what they named it. But within that comes information about how these people typically consume information, so what television shows they watch, kind of outdoor lifestyle they lead. And so if you're doing something like R3, you can think about, how am I going to contact these people? How am I going to reinvigorate? How am I going to recruit these people into becoming, more into outdoors, that type of thing. And so tying in traditional GIS aggregations and GIS processes in with that tabular data set in this new insights environment has been a very interesting thing to do. Again, things you can do in ArcGIS right now if you have the technical knowledge to do it, but when I did this in Insights, this whole thing took me about 10 minutes to do, as opposed to going through multiple layers and desktop. Finally, what I like about Insights is you can start to dig in a little bit more and actually look at some of the analytics going on. So in this case, again, from Ohio, I have fish caught versus fish kept, and I colored the dots by month. And so you can see there's not a strong correlation at all. A lot of people were fishing in Ohio that were not keeping fish. They just went out fishing. But you can see up here on top, you have some of these strange outliers where someone caught upwards of 100 fish and kept almost 80 fish. And so what's nice about Insights is you can go through, you can get, obviously the mathematical information about statistics, but you can click on these specific points and that will show them in the map spatially where these are located. And the best thing about this whole project is that the input was just a raw CSV file. I just took a raw CSV file, I opened it up in Insights, I geocoded based on zip code, and away I went. I took a data set that traditionally would have been very hard to use in something like ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro, and then kind of opened it up and was doing analysis in it within just a couple of minutes after the geocoding was done. So that's a little tidbit, a little taste of where we envision GIS going and how we can bring more users into the fold. This was a kind of a fire hose of information, and what Mike and I are going to do for the next three webinars is kind of dig in a little bit deeper and go a little bit more specialized. So next month will be critical fish and wildlife workflows. In December, we'll be talking about agriculture. And then in January, it'll be critical forestry workflows. And so I realized today was probably a lot, and we're happy to take questions. But that's how we're going to go in the future. Every month, we'll be diving in a little bit deeper. And today, we kind of wanted to level set. So with that, Mike and I will take questions. Here's our contact information if you want to take something offline, and Mike and I are both very happy to answer questions. But yeah, we have about 8 minutes left now, and I'm happy to take questions right now too, and Mike is as well.
Okay, thanks, Mike and Matt. We've received a few questions. I'll just go ahead and start asking, and if you still have a question, you can still enter it into the box, and I'll try to add it to the list. So the first question we got is, does Dashboard take Excel data too, or is it all based on GIS data?
It is all based on GIS data, and if you take that spreadsheet and you put it into GIS, then yes, you could indirectly use spreadsheet data, but yeah, it has to be tied to a layer of some sort.
Okay, and we just got another one. Does Collector allow users to fill the values in a table?
Yes, you can set default, and Collector is actually in a very interesting spot right now. There's what's called the Aurora project coming out in Q1 of 2019, I believe, or it's Q4 of this year. But Collector is going to have a significant upgrade to have some of that logic that you have in Survey 123 in it very soon. But yes, there's ways you can do that. It gets a little bit tricky, but it'll be easier once the update is out.
But just to add to that real quick, largely the attribute entry with Collector is database driven. So if you have things like domains, for example, in your GIS layers, those will come across as drop down lists,
yep.
And things like that. So there is some utility there, but yeah, as Matt said, that's really going to increase, especially as the next generation of Collector comes out.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and sticking with the Collector theme, is it possible to use Survey 123 and or Collector with field workers who don't have a cell or Wi-Fi connection?
Yes, and so the way it works is you have to basically create a tile package, and there's a tool out there now called the Tile Package Creator, and that basically builds tiles that you then download onto your device and then can take with you when you're out in the field. And so even if you're not connected to Wi-Fi or cell, you can still use your GPS, you still can collect points, and then it just saves that local file on your device. And then once you come back into Wi-Fi or cell reception, you can upload that data back in, and then it will immediately be available to the rest of the ArcGIS portal.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to the majority, if not just about all of the environment natural resource agencies we work with have needs for that disconnected kind of data collection. And so we have a ton of examples for a lot of different workflows and use cases and things that that are available to learn from as well. And but yeah, that's very common to use it in that scenario. Many agencies actually just default to that scenario, so they don't even have to worry about if they're going to have connection or not. They just kind of default to, okay, we're going to do disconnected data collection and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got some more questions coming in. We'll get to as many as we can. Can U.S. territories such as American Samoa have access to ArcGIS platform?
Oh, that's a good question. Mike, I'll have to defer that one to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, it's used worldwide, so I really don't see any, issue there with having access.
Mm-hmm.
So we have users all over the world.
Okay, and let's see. Can dashboard app use 3D data?
Ooh, that is one I have not tried. I do not think so. I think you have to have a web scene, but that's something that I can double check on and verify.
Yeah, I would have to do the same thing.
Okay, and if we don't get to your question, we can follow up with you after. Let's see, there's a few more coming in. In general, what's the precision of GPS using iPads or iPhones?
That will depend greatly on the conditions that you're collecting in. If you're under canopy, that will not be that great. The good news is that in Collector, right now you can have it set so that your precision has to be X meters in order to take a measurement. And so if you are under canopy and you say your error is like 10 meters or something like that, Collector will tell you, you can't take a measurement right now. You can also connect an exterior through Bluetooth, an exterior GPS device that will allow you to take, survey grade measurements in Collector. And I keep saying Collector right now because that functionality is coming eventually to Survey 123, but that's still probably a 2019 implementation. And so that's the simple answer, but the bigger answer is there's ways you can set it up to get around those issues.
Yeah, and I'd just add to that, there's really good documentation on the Esri website about external GPS receivers and connecting those to Collector, and which ones are supported and all that kind of stuff. The other thing too, beyond just setting limits for, hey, if the accuracy is is not where you need it according to your requirements, don't collect. The other thing that you can do are other techniques like averaging, for example, and you can actually do that in both Collector and Survey 123, where just like kind of traditional GPS, where back in the day when you would do averaging of fixes in order to get the point or location that you're interested in, you can do a similar process in Collector and Survey 123. So that's usually what we recommend is, going down those roads and those techniques.
Okay, and we have one last question. Can the pictures that are taken in Collector be used in a story map, ArcGIS Online map, not as an attachment, but built into the pop-up?
Yes. You'll have to do some HTML configuration, I believe, to get that to work. But I have seen some examples of that. And if that's something you want to do, you can reach out to us and we can help you with that.
Yep.
Okay, and we just got one last question. For sharing information through story maps, are adjustable pop-ups coming soon?
That is one I'm not sure about. That is definitely something I've seen on the ideas page, has a lot of backing, but I have not heard from any of the product teams exactly if that's coming in, if so, when.
Yeah, we can reach back out and double check that with the product team, but
Yep.
We can follow up if you'd like.
So thank you again for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed the presentation.